Episode 39. Let's do this.
This is The Business of Architecture. Helping architects conquer the world. And here's your host, Enoch Sears.
Welcome back, Architect Nation, to the Business of Architecture show. My name is Enoch Sears. I am your host. And today we will be talking with Aurora Miniguelo. She is the social media and marketing manager at NoVeg, an online software retailer for design professionals. Now, today is the second part of our conversation with Aurora. Last week we talked about making a marketing plan through goal setting and prioritization. And this week we're going to talk about how you can extend your reach and influence through social media and online tools. Now, Aurora's done an excellent job with social media, and so that's part of the reason why I wanted to have her on the show, to share her little secrets and hacks that she uses to help spread the NoVeg brand. And in addition to that, before we get started here, I want to ask you a question. So today's the second episode of 2014. I just want to ask you, how do you feel about the year ahead? Are things picking up where you're at? I know that where I'm at in Central California, job inquiries are definitely picking up. I can tell the economy is improving, and I have a feeling that we're going into one of those typical upcycles in the profession where suddenly the challenges switch from, where are we going to get leads and where are we going to get projects to where are we going to find the right kind of people to get the projects done? How are we going to manage the process to be able to deliver the results that we like to deliver? So go ahead and visit the podcast show page. Leave me your comments about what your thoughts are for 2014. How do you feel about this year? Are you optimistic? Are you still struggling? Is your firm still experiencing the tail end of the recession? Let me know what's going on out there. And in addition to that, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Eric Reinhold, who left an awesome review over on iTunes. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to hop on over there to iTunes. I appreciate that. It helps me make the show better and understand what I need to do to improve the show. So if you've been listening for a while and you haven't left me a review on iTunes, head on over there. I really appreciate that. I'll give you a shout out on air if you like. If you leave your name, I'll go ahead and mention you on the air. And other than that, I just want to say I'm excited for this episode. Thank you everyone for your support. Let's make 2014 an awesome year. And without further ado, here's the show. All right, well, welcome back, Agile Architects. This is Enoch from Business of Architecture, and today we're going to continue our conversation with Aurora Miniguelo. She is the marketing manager at NoVeg, the top online reseller of software for design professionals. I had to look at my notes there. But they sell everything from Rhino to Revit to Adobe Photoshop to AutoCAD, etc. And it is just a pleasure to have you back on the show, Aurora. I really enjoyed the things we talked about last week, so once again, welcome back.
Thank you, Enoch. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, when we first started talking about coming on the show, we discussed how you're definitely involved in the social media side, but as the marketing manager, you take the much bigger picture of guiding NoVeg's marketing decisions. And last episode, we talked a little bit about how we as architects can use some of those things that you do in our own businesses. So I thought in this episode it'd be fun to jump over and talk about what you're doing in social media, sort of with the online tools and sort of that.
Sure. So NoVeg is an online company. So we have a physical presence. We're in San Francisco. There's real people here, but we do business online. So it's very important for us to have an online presence. And I would say, as we go on, like everybody's business will be an online business in some form or another. So you really need to have an online presence. And we all know this. Social networking and social networks have an incredible impact on the way we view brands and the way we interact. They're also really bad at taking all your time and sort of can be a big waste of time. So as you remember, last week I talked about having your goals and really be focused on prioritizing and what you want. So you need to have a little bit of self-discipline online. Now, the big question, I think, given the constraint of time, is which social networking platform to use. And we talked about this at the Google Hangout, right? Like,
you bet.
Which ones you use and I use and so on. So, you can all look back at that episode. But I would say pick 1, 2, or 3 at the most platforms that you want to use. It's very important in marketing that you're consistent. So if you blog once and then you don't blog for 2 months, you might just not don't blog, just skip it. Maybe it's not for you. If you're on Facebook once a week, not enough. You need to pick platforms that you can be consistent with. And each platform is quite different, so it will depend on your personality, on where your prospective clients will see you, and sort of how much time you can devote to each of these social networks.
Absolutely. Would you recommend, from your experience, that they focus on one or two that they can devote more time to, or get on more networks, even if it means spreading themselves thinner?
I would focus on one or two. Now, if you get one or two down and then you feel like it gets easier, then you can add. But I think, like, let's start with one or two, get those under control, learn them well, have a strategy, and then it will take less time, and then you can add more.
Okay.
Also, at that point, you might, if you learn them well and you have a strategy, you could hire somebody to help you with them, but you know what you're doing, you know what they're doing, and you'll be able to direct better. So I'm always like one step at a time, sort of. That's that. So maybe I can say a little bit about my experience with each one of them.
Well, let's talk for a second about what's in it for me as an architect. Why would I even get online? There's a lot of architects I know, peers of mine, colleagues, who, for instance, might not even have websites, and they've been able to function just fine in the past without having a website at all or any online presence. So let's
Yeah,
talk a little bit about what are the benefits of being online. Let's
sure.
discuss that.
Yes, there's quite a few. First of all, it's gonna become less and less possible to not be online and still keep your business going, because we're so used as consumer to just go online for everything. If you've ever had the experience of the internet not working at your house or at your business for like a day, that your life comes to a standstill. So these are the expectations of your prospective clients, is that they can Google you or they can find you online in a second. The biggest thing for architects, in my opinion, is the visual impact of images. I mean, people want to see, we're becoming more and more of a visual culture. We like to see videos and photos of everything, and we read less and less and less. So I think to have your pictures out there on the web is amazing, and it's the biggest factor. Then there's two different strategies you can use. Now, depending how much money you have to spend and how big you are, you can have a strategy of people when they search for architects in your area, or a certain type of architecture, or a certain type of architect, that they find you. That is a more expensive strategy to have, and you really have to look at the competition, what they're doing, and sort of like how much that would cost. The other strategy is that if you're doing effective offline networking and you're meeting people and you're speaking and you're out there in the world, then to then refer everybody you meet, or everybody who might refer you can also send everybody to meet you online, then online becomes a way to stay in touch.
Okay.
And in this, I want to include a newsletter. So if you have a newsletter, this is another way. So, I don't talk to all of Novett. We have like thousands of followers and thousands of clients. Our social media reach is gigantic. It would be just impossible for me and for my team to keep in touch with everybody. But everybody follows us. If somebody follows us on Facebook or Twitter, or they receive our newsletter, or they watch our webinars on YouTube, like every week, every hour on Twitter, once in a while, they'll hear from us. That's a way of staying in touch. And if they want to talk and have a conversation, they can easily reach us. And that's another way of staying in touch. So there are two main strategies. You want to think if the strategy is to be found online, that costs more. And it will depend if you can do it based on your budget and the competition's budget. And then there's a strategy of, I'm going to keep in touch and have a way to refer everybody I meet and everybody that hears about me. They can keep in touch. They can see what they do. And it's sort of like think about it as a virtual living room or town square, where you keep meeting people.
Okay, so there's two ways. There's two strategies, I guess. One of them would be being found online, In other words, people have never heard of you before and find you. And then the other thing was just keeping in touch with people
Yes.
online, right?
Yes. And, under that you can put, under that umbrella of keeping in touch, it can be like your it's sort of like virtual shop window. So like they can come and look at your new work if you, keep updated website or blog. Sorry, just once. We have an open office here. So it can be that. It can be a way also to collaborate with people. You can make friends, with people from all over the country, all over the world. You can collaborate online and so on. So yes, it's for people essentially that have already heard about you somehow, or they will find you online because you're part of communities or conversations.
Okay, excellent. What would you say, just playing devil's advocate here, what would you say to the architects out there who don't have a client base that is looking for architects online? For instance, there's other avenues, right? They're not going to Google search an architect.
Well, how are you showing them your new projects, or how are you letting them know all the new things you're doing? The alternative to that before and even now, people still do is direct mail, right? You send a postcard, that's really expensive. Like it can be very expensive. It's time consuming to create. I receive things like that. I throw them out, I look at them, I throw them out. Social media or like online presence is really a way to keep showcasing what you do. And you want to keep showing all your new work, what you're, collaborating on and all that.
Got it. Are you familiar with the term content marketing, Aurora?
Yes, we do a lot of content marketing.
I knew you were, but so tell us about content marketing. Tell us what it is.
Well, content marketing essentially is sharing content that is valuable to your prospective clients and your community. So this can be content that you create, or it can be content that you find from other people. So we do both here in Novage. We create a lot of content, and we also share a lot of content from other people. I would say, this is really a way to, I think you have to think of these kind of things just like in real life. So you would go and have dinner with a group of people, and you want to be able to tell some stories and then listen to their stories, and then you're gonna go have dinner with other people and say, oh, Enoch told me this great story about, it's the same thing with content marketing. It's just online.
Okay, and give me some examples of what content marketing is. For instance, tell me the ways, maybe 3 examples of how NovEdge uses content marketing.
Sure. So on the original side, we have a webinar series. It's a weekly series of webinars, and we invite trainers of different software that we use, and they give a 1-hour class that includes a Q&A on how to use that specific software in, some features, or maybe it's the new features, or for a certain profession and so on. Like the latest one we had was Bank Speed, and they showed some features for jewelers, for example. And then people attending the webinar can ask questions and have them answered right there. Then we put these webinars on YouTube and Vimeo for free, and they're there forever, and you can go and watch them. And so this is our way to contribute to the education of anybody online, really, because it doesn't matter. You might not be our prospective customer at all, and you can watch these things. So it's really contributing to the community and to education. Same thing with the Google Hangout series that you participated in, and that is geared towards architects, and it's tips and tricks to succeed in the profession. So whether it's marketing, or how to present to clients, or how to get a job if you're out of school. Another thing that we do is that we really like to find out what other people are doing, and to share things that we think are valuable to the people that follow us online. So, we often share your podcasts, the links to your podcast.
I appreciate that.
We're big fans of Bob Borson's Life of an Architect blog. We just reshared, I think, yesterday or this morning, his blog post about how much it costs to become a licensed architect, and he had a whole breakdown, right? So there's a lot of things that I don't know and my team doesn't know, and why not share from people that have a great knowledge and point of view, and might generate discussion and interest. So we want to be helpful. Content marketing is about being helpful and about helping your community.
I think you guys are definitely in the top 5% of content marketers out there. I mean, or maybe, and that's that was
Thank
one
you.
reason why I saw what you're doing is very effective, Aurora, because you guys are just nailing the content marketing. So congratulations on that.
Thank
And I think
you.
you're doing
Thank
an
you.
excellent job. And so
Yeah,
let's,
I want to just say something. I work with a team here, and so again, on the theme of collaboration, not doing it alone, I have Barbara D'Aloisio, who's our social media person. She's there, like, and then Kevin Liu, who's the community manager, my marketing associate that works in front of me, and we have meetings every day discussing, brainstorming, looking at content, sharing tips, and just coming up with ideas all the time. So when give a big shout out, to them because that's all you see me here. But I'm really, I'm working with a team of awesome people.
well, we definitely appreciate that, and they deserve a lot of the credit too. So it's Kevin and Barbara?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for mentioning them. Now, what is the benefit? So let's talk about the benefit that NovEdge gets about all this effort into creating this content, which once again is educational content, or it's things like how to succeed in architecture for architects. How does that benefit NovEdge?
Well, that's a really good question. So, one of the things I want to say is that the owners and founders of NovEdge have a background in engineering, and so for them it was really important to sort of build a community and not just like be, oh, we sell software. Like they wanted to do something more, with NovEdge, and so a lot of this is we want to build community and we want to contribute to the people that make it possible for us to be out there and exist as a company. The other benefit is that people keep hearing our name and keep it creates trust. It creates a sense of like they know who we are, and when you need software, you know who you're buying your software from, and you keeping in touch. I hope people will remember NovEdge when it's time to buy the software. So that's sort of how it works for us, and that's how it will work for you too as an architect. You want to keep in touch, and you want people to think of you when they need an architect, or when their friend needs one, or their associate, or anything like that. They want to be, oh, who is that person that sends me the newsletter, or is always posting great tips on how to hire an architect, or I read, and they'll say, oh yes, it's Enoch, or it's Bob, or let's talk to him.
Awesome. So let me give you an example and tell me if this goes along with your understanding of content marketing that deals directly with architecture. But say, for instance, going back to my example of working with facility managers at hospitals, there's a code cycle change happening here in California. First of the year, we're going over to a new code. So let's just say, for instance, I sent out, whether it's an email blast or a personal letter to these facility managers, and I said, hey, by the way, I'm hosting a webinar, in 2 weeks on the code changes that are going to affect hospitals. And I'd love for you to come on the webinar, and I'm going to talk about all the changes that you can expect. Is that a good example of a content marketing?
Yes, that's a great example of it. As a marketer, I really like HubSpot. It's a blog for marketers, and what they create is actually like this software for you to do marketing. Okay, so I am their target market. Even if I don't have their software, I'm the target market. And I read their blog all the time because all they do is like they reshare and repackage information of all the changes on all social media's marketing practices, everything I'm interested in. So I know if I go to HubSpot, like they have a summary of what I would find in 10 different places. So it's really useful. So content marketing needs to be useful and interesting to the people you want to sell to and you want to connect with.
Wow. I just had this my mind started spinning, because have you ever been in front of a mirror and a mirror's also behind you and you look in that mirror and you see yourself
Yes.
like infinity times? So it's kind of weird because we're talking about content marketing and we're producing content marketing, and
Right.
and you're talking about another person that produces content marketing. Oh, it's just
Yeah, it's very meta, all of this.
very, very meta. So I'm sorry, go on.
But that's that perfect. I mean, exactly. So you might, or another way to think about it is that if you help your client get clients, that's a way to be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you help you, so or in your case, if you help your client understand better how they can deal with their problems of building, or restoring or anything, then you're helping them and they will trust you and will come back to you for more. And again, that's where it's important not to lie because you really want to generate trust, and trust is never built on lie or manipulation. It's always built about sharing things you're really knowledgeable about and that can be really helpful.
Awesome, awesome. That is okay. So there's content marketing, folks, and that was. Let's talk about platforms and about different. So let's jump in now that we got that out of the way. Sort of like why we would do it. Let's talk a little bit about the different platforms and.
Okay. So we can start with Facebook. Well, let me take a step back. So you really need to figure out where your prospective clients are going to be. Okay, either where they're going to be because they're there already looking for people, or where you can direct them that they will take the time to go and go back to.
Okay, so just to pause for a second. So for
Sure.
instance, my facility manager's example, they're not on Facebook, they're not on Google Plus.
Yeah.
It would probably be for them, it would be email or links back to my website. In other words, maybe webinars and reports and newsletters I would send. For a residential
Yeah.
architect, oh, go on.
No, I was gonna say yes. For, in your case, an email newsletter, if they would subscribe and you can ask them when you meet them, you say, oh, I send this email newsletter, once a month or once a week or however often, like, would you mind if I added you to it? The webinar I think is a great idea because that way, and especially if it's recorded and you leave it online, so if they're not available, they can go back and look at it. And then the website, definitely, because people will go back to your website and look at it and pass it along. For residential architects, Facebook might be really, really effective because everybody's on Facebook. I have one friend that's not on Facebook. And everybody's on Facebook, right? And everybody's on Facebook every day. Like, okay, not everybody, but a lot of people are on Facebook every day. So they're already hanging out on Facebook and they're hanging out in their personal life, so that could be a really good way. The drawback to Facebook is that if you really want a good way an effective way to use it, you do have to use their ads. If you don't promote the post, only a small percentage of the people who like your page are going to see your posts.
So just to describe that for our listeners, what that means is that when you share a link on Facebook, Facebook is only going to send that to, say, maybe 15% of the people who liked your page, and you can pay to get it exposed to maybe 50 or 80% of the people. Is that right?
Yes, it's not very expensive. So that's where you need to figure out the budget and, the return on investment. And that's where keeping track of how people find you and all that, it's very important. But that's essentially the point of Facebook. So Facebook, of course, we're talking here about Facebook business pages. Your private Facebook and your private profile, it's a different story. Now, let me say a little bit what I think about that. You want to have a business page for your company. You don't want to treat your private Facebook profile as if it's 100% private. Even if all your settings are completely private, I never consider anything I put online as private because anybody can take a screenshot and send it over email. Facebook things change, settings change all the time. Okay, so be very careful. So remember when I said, especially if you're a small practitioner, you always want to let everybody know what you're up to. So let's say you have a Facebook business page and you post there, every day. Well, once every 2 weeks or the one time that you work on a great project and you have great pictures, share that with your friends on your personal profile. Okay, let them know what you're up to. Okay, you never know who they know, what they might say. Okay, so you need to have your Facebook private persona, private profile separate, completely separate than your Facebook business page. But every once in a while, reshare from business to personal, okay, so that your network knows what you're up to. The big tip on all the social media platforms is that visual content is king. People like images. So, learn how to use your camera phone, get a professional photographer, just be knowledgeable about copyright, put images out there. People like that a lot.
Okay, so that talked about Facebook.
Okay, so then let's talk about Twitter. So Twitter is very interesting because it's all public. Yes, there are some, direct messages. There are some ways to keep your tweets private, but essentially it's public and you can approach anybody and see everybody's conversation. So while on Facebook, you need to ask your prospective clients to like your page, and you have to, they have to come to you. And it's really weird if you friend somebody on Facebook that you don't know in real life. On Twitter, it's the opposite, where it's really built so people can connect with people that have the same interests. So I find that if you want to connect with new colleagues or complementary businesses or find content or anything, that is a great way to go about it. So the sort of drawback with Twitter is that it can be very overwhelming. It's very much in the moment. It's little text, and there's a lot going on at all times. So you need a third-party application to keep track of only the tweets that you're interested in from the people you're interested in. So you can use Hootsuite or TweetDeck. They are free. Hootsuite is free until a certain point, and even when you pay, it's fairly inexpensive. And that way you can create lists. So I have a list, for example, with Enoch and Evan Troxel and Neil Pan and Jeff Stafford. And if you check the Noveg blog, we have a list of, the 10 resources for architects. And so I have a list on Twitter, for example, with the people that I find have a consistent, that this post consistently good content. And so I want to make sure I don't miss their tweets. You can have you can create a list on Hootsuite based on hashtags. So what are hashtags? Hashtags are ways that people mark topics on their tweets. So, there's actually a really great website on this. Let me see if I can find the name. It's called tagdef.com. And I don't know if you use it. Do you use it?
No, that's a new one
Like
for
that?
me. I'm learning something. This is great.
And you can check there the meaning of any hashtag, and you can register hashtags. And so, don't come up with your own hashtags without checking first on Twitter or on tagdef.com that is already, whether that hashtag is already out there, because it might be out there and mean something completely different. So you want to check. And then if you add hashtags to your tweets, people can look for them. They can look for a topic, and then they can see all the tweets on that topic. So you can create a list in Hootsuite, for example, just always looking at a certain hashtag topic. Okay, so let's say that you use AutoCAD, and you want to see what people are talking about AutoCAD. You can have an hashtag AutoCAD, and then every time somebody posts something marked with that, you will see it appear in your list. What else about both Twitter and Facebook, all the social networking platform tag people. So there's always a way to tag people, which means to mention people in your post so that anybody looking at that can click and be referred to this person, or and that person will get a notification that they've been mentioned. It's very important. It's sort of like going back to our metaphor of the dinner party, So, Enoch says a great story, and I repeat it. I really want to give him credit. I want to say like, oh, he said this great story, right? On social network, you not only can give credit, you can post a link so that he knows he's being given credit, and everybody can go and read the original one or connect with him if they think he might have some other great stories, right? So that's very important to always keep in mind the other people. And the other thing is, don't just post your content, share other people's content, respond to other people, have a conversation, again, just like the real life, in real life. Have you ever had a dinner with somebody who the entire dinner just talked? I actually had one time that experience. It was, it's not great. It's really not good. You don't want to do the same thing on social media. And one last thing that a lot of people don't know about Twitter is that actually posting images on Twitter increases your interaction and your visibility and the success of your tweet a lot. So you wouldn't think about it because, we don't think of Twitter as a visual platform, but it is actually very important to post images there as well.
That's awesome. So
Maybe,
I just want to
yeah.
mention to those who are listening, I'm sure most people, quite honestly, on this podcast know what a hashtag is. If you don't feel, don't feel out in the outer circle. It just means that you put a pound symbol in front of the topic. So, or the number symbol or the pound symbol. It's called a hash mark. And so that's sort of how you define hashtags.
Thank you. Yes, I'm all day long on this, and this sometimes I forget. Yeah. Um, so the other social network that I really like is Google Plus. Google Plus is still new, and what I find is that less people are on it. So there isn't as much of a, on Facebook you can count that everybody is on it. On Twitter, there's very avid user and a lot of people are on it, but Google Plus, is still sort of like growing. What I find that is positive about this is that people on it are mostly on it very focused on what they want to talk about, and especially for architects is very good. There's a lot of architects, design professionals there having conversations that are about what they do, and not a lot of other sort of what I ate today and all that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for a social network to find like-minded professionals to connect with, Google Plus is a good one. I mentioned before, Just Stafford has a great community for architects called Big Time Small Firm, and it's there on Google Plus. You can apply to be part of it. And there's other communities. I'm exploring as well all the potentials. A few things about Google Plus. Let me think. One big thing is the hashtag. They're important there as well. So they work the same way as with Twitter. You can mark topics, and Facebook has them too as well now. So, all the social networks have them. And the other thing is Google Plus has a great way of showing content. So your videos, your pictures, really, I don't know, it's my favorite way to look at pictures and videos. They show up really nicely. So especially, again, for visual professionals, that's really important. And then the last thing is that it works with circles. So instead of sort of fans, you put people in circles, and you can have different circles, and they put you in circles, and they can have different circles. What are circles? Circles are essentially groups of people. So, or categories, if you want to call it. So you follow somebody, which means, you're gonna see what they decide to share. If they don't follow you back, then you'll see what they decide to share publicly. If they follow you, then they might decide to just share something with you. And you divide the people you follow in categories. Like, so you can have one for friends, you can have one for family, you can have one for, I don't know, social media marketers you like, architects you like, past clients. You can decide. And people can do that too, The thing about circles is that they're sort of in between Twitter and Facebook. So Facebook, you cannot add people, okay? Unless you know them, your friends and all that, you cannot add them. And you certainly cannot add them to your page. They have to like your page on their own. On Twitter, you can follow anyone you want. Twitter is completely, it's so public and out there, and the whole idea is like just follow anybody you want. It doesn't matter. So the Google Plus circles are kind of in between. It's totally okay for you to add to the circle somebody you don't know. They're gonna, they're gonna see, and they're gonna wonder where they found it. It's not quite like Twitter, everything goes, but it's sort of like a good medium, again, to start following people you don't know and connecting that way.
Excellent. Any other things about Google Plus that we need to know about? Any intricacies about how to use it successfully?
Well, so Google Plus is a little bit more, when you put things publicly, not a lot of people might see them. So it's very important you build your circles and then people follow you. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to have a strategy around that. And yeah, they don't, it's not like Twitter where, you put it out there. You have to have a bit of a strategy over people following you and you following people, and make sure you share that way and increase those numbers in your circles. The great thing we like at NoVeg about Google Plus, it's the Google Hangout on air feature. And so we have our series How to Succeed in Architecture, and you basically can set up, it's a multiple video call with up to 10 people and have a live talk show that gets recorded and broadcast on YouTube simultaneously. And when we do our own, we set up an event page where the video streams and people can comment and ask questions right there, real time. So I really like that, and it might be a great reason to join Google Plus as an individual, just to be able to watch Google Hangouts on air.
Excellent. Any other social platforms, Aurora, that you'd like to talk
There's
about?
a ton, but
that you would like to tell us about that we need to know about?
Well, I think, I want to talk about blogging, if it's okay for a little bit. So one blog that's really great, I mentioned Bob Borson, Life of an Architect. There is another blog that's really great. That's the Build blog, Build LLC. I think they're in Seattle, and they have a great output. There's, of course, our blog, the Noveg blog. We blog multiple times a week. There's Evan Troxel. He has a great blog as well. So blogging is sort of like a social media platform as well, and you want to create content for your blog and then broadcast it in all the other avenues, right? The big thing about it is that you have to be committed to it, and you have to have a routine. So I would say, well, statistically, we know that blogging twice a week, it's much more effective than blogging once a week. And less than once a week, just forget it. Don't blog. Do something else. So if you like to write, or if you're not like a big writer, you can find ways to just share pictures from what you do, and you want to find your own voice. So you want to try that. You've done it before. That appeals to you. Blogging is a great way to share content, create content, and stay in touch with colleagues, clients, everybody.
So it's almost like blogging actually makes the backbone of your social media strategy. If you can produce the content on there and then spread it out and share things, and you're doing this other social media, is that a good way to describe blogging from your perspective?
It could be one. It could be one. Yeah, it depends. The backbone can be a number of things. And so you can have a backbone just based on Twitter, and you can be really heavy on Twitter, and that can be the backbone of your social media strategy. But another way could be to have a blog. So that again, I feel like it depends how much you like writing or how much you want to tackle that, and if that appeals to you. I'm a big fan of pushing yourself out of the comfort zone a little bit all the time, but also, if there's something else you're passionate about, and then there's something you're not passionate about, go with the passion. If you think it's going to be as effective, that's a better use of your time.
Excellent. Are there any other resources besides HubSpot, which you mentioned previously, that you can send people to that have impacted you in terms of social media and online tools?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I like HubSpot, I like Seth Godin, and then I follow, everybody else that is listed, including you, and I learn all the time by seeing what you guys do. So Evan Troxel, Neil Penn, and Cormac Phelan of the ArchiSpeak podcast, they do a great job. They're all on Twitter, and they have very different personalities, and you can really, learn how everybody expresses themselves and how personal versus how professional you can be. Bob Borson is great, and he really has a great way of going about it. Jeff Stafford had a whole Google Hangout that I participated in on how to use Google+. So if I find somebody that is interesting, I start following them, and I look at their updates, and I sort of pick up things all over the place. And then I mentioned I have my own marketing group and my own team here, so that's also a source of constant update and what we learn and what we try.
Excellent, excellent. I'll add to the list other people, and if we're forgetting you, you can just send me an email. But I know there's you check out Jeff Eccles on Twitter, Architect of the Internet, and then my buddy Mark LePage at Entrepreneur Architect has some interesting resources for smaller firms. So there's starting to be this good community of architects that are doing it, and those would be good to look at for examples. How about any books about social media or online tools that you were impactful?
Yeah, I have to say I've learned everything on social media, it's very, social media changes so fast that it's harder to learn that from books.
Yeah.
And sort of the mentality around it is that people share what they learn on social media. So if you go on Google Plus, for example, I forgot what the hashtag is, but you can do a quick search and there's like communities on learning how to use Google Plus. So um it's very fast paced. You really want to keep on top of it every day, every week. Things change very fast.
Excellent. Thanks, Aurora. Any closing thoughts on social media and online tools for marketing?
Be focused. Really look at those marketing goals and your metrics and the results you're getting, and make sure that you're using social media in a way that is consistent with your goals, because I'm telling you from experience, you can spend 8 hours on Facebook a day and achieve absolutely nothing. So you want to be very, very focused.
You brought up something that I just want to talk about before we end the interview, Aurora, if that's all right.
Yeah.
And that is time management and social media. What tips do you have for architects who are very busy running their own businesses or involved in their jobs? How to get the most out of social media? Do you have any tips for that while still minimizing the time?
Yeah. So it depends on your personality. So first of all, you need to know yourself and be very realistic on what you can handle and not handle. I know people that there are some apps and things for your computer where you can literally prevent certain things to pop up open, and you have to put password to, it makes it hard for you to just click on Facebook and look at things. So that might be something that works for you. Another technique is to allow yourself to be on social media or email only at certain times during the day and limit that. For me, what I find is that I like to take breaks more often. So I try to sort of be focused on something for an hour and a half, and then I allow myself 10 minutes, sort of doing something else. And then I get back an hour and a half, and then maybe I take a little break, and that works better for my personality. So you have to know yourself and then experiment with a couple of these tips and see what works for you.
Excellent. Well, Aurora Minigelo, thank you so much for being on the Business of Architecture show. I've gotten a lot out of this conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. I love your show, Enoch, so it's great to be here.
Yeah, now we finally got you on it.
That's how you got me back.
Yeah, so a warning to all those other viewers out here: be careful what you do. You might end up with your butt in the seat on the other end of the camera, right?
Right.
All right, Aurora, we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap for another show about the business of architecture. To get more resources about how you as an architect can raise your fees, land the projects you love to work on, and get the time in your day back, join the members-only Business of Architecture Insider List for free by going to businessafarchitecture.com/free. Enter your best email address there, and I will send you instant access to free resources, including my book, Social Media for Architects. If you'd like to discuss a thought or insight from today's show, visit businessafarchitecture.com/podcast. On that page, you'll also find my notes from today's show and the action items I took away from our conversation. Until next week, keep rocking and go conquer the world.
Everybody knows that you just gotta do it anyway.
The views expressed on the show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help architects conquer the world. Bump music credit to Ben Folds 5. Do it anyway.